Beginning college can be an overwhelming experience, and with it comes a lot of anxieties. What is it like making friends in a sea of strangers? And will I be ready for the challenge and the demand of the college classes based on what everyone else has told me? And is my major the right fit for the career that I may or may not want? Or what if I change my mind? And in many ways, institutions have tried to combat this by utilizing summer bridge or early start programs. And they're typically on a small scale for a specific set of students, where they bring students in a little bit early, a week or two before classes start, to get them opportunities to interact with one another and start making friends, and also become more familiar with the school that they're attending and how to use those resources. And with that, there have been some mixed results. However, the University of Nevada in Reno has taken this concept and put it on steroids, and it has actually seen some very significant results. So welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Drew, and here I discuss higher education through the eyes of future and current college students, college administrators, and I talk about everything about how to navigate the college experience and current events in higher education. So if this is where you want to be and this is what you want to know, then make sure you hit subscribe. So Nevada Reno has taken their program, which they call NevadaFIT, and they have grown that from what used to be just for biology students at their school. And originally, this was based off of LSU's intensive orientation that they had for their biology students. And so what it is, this is for all incoming students. That includes first year and transfer students. And they come in and they are placed into groups based on their major that they call camps. And these groups are affiliated with colleges within the university. Now, I know this sounds confusing, and I may talk about this in another video. When we talk about the structure of a university, because many people will talk about college and university, or they'll use those terms interchangeably, think of the university like Hogwarts. And then when we talk about the colleges within the university, those are like the houses. You have the Gryffindors and the Hufflepuffs. And then within those houses are the majors that are grouped together. So the liberal arts college, for example, would have your English and your communication and your history and your sociology degrees. And then you may have an engineering college or a business college or a science and computing college. And that's really how institutions like to organize themselves. And so there are 11 camps at NevadaFIT that are affiliated with the colleges at UNR. Now, within these camps, students are broken further into smaller groups of 7 students with a peer mentor, and they're called packs, and they have a pack leader, which is in relation to their athletic program, the Nevada Reno Wolfpack. And so this is an opportunity for students to get into smaller groups and start to get to know one another in really a low stakes and more casual environment. Now, when we think about traditional orientations, what a lot of students do at institutions is they will go through and they will be introduced to resources on campus like counseling services and the gym. They may meet with their advisor and test or get placed into a math course prior to beginning the semester and really start to establish that first semester schedule for them, and maybe even get to feel out campus and kind of wander around and see it for themselves. What NevadaFIT does is they take this and they make it more immersive. And so it's for that first week before classes begin where students will move onto campus and they will actually start taking math courses. They will go to lectures based on the camp that they're in. And I also forgot to mention that for students who are undecided with their majors, there's a camp for them too. And so students are really getting a hands-on immersive experience with going around campus, finding those classes, attending those classes. And so they will go to lectures. And I think in the article that I'll post in the description, they talk about business students taking economics lectures. And they will actually have assignments. So the students will have to go to study sessions and learn how to do that. And they will have grades assigned to them. But in a sense, not that it's pass, fail, and this is going to set your future as a college student, but it's more to gauge your readiness and get you used to, okay, this is what it's like to be in a college class. These are the expectations. This is the pace. This is kind of what they're looking for in terms of producing work based on my assignments. So I think that's a really good opportunity to kind of get that head start. And they also get to go around campus and see it for themselves and become more comfortable with those aforementioned resources that I talked about with other orientations. They can actually go see the gym. They can actually see where counseling is located, and they can start to see themselves experiencing this life as a college student before it officially begins, so to speak, once those classes start. And it's a massive undertaking. There is actually a full-time director and assistant director who oversee this. There are staff who will do a mini version of this for students who can't attend, and that's typically like student athletes. And there are hundreds of students who serve as peer mentors, which is also another great resource to have as an incoming student, because now you have someone that you're interacting with who has walked in your shoes, and you can kind of ask those questions that you may be too timid to ask anyone else, or they may give you advice that you had never even thought about, or questions you never even thought to ask yourself. And so when I talked about at the beginning of this video that they saw very positive results, this is what they found. So they surveyed their students. I think it was the 2024 results. Students who attended felt more confident about being a college student and being at UNR, and it was around a 15% increase after attending NevadaFIT, which is massive when you consider how many students are actually attending this. Typical programs would be maybe 30 to 100 to a few hundred students. We're talking about several hundred students as part of this program. And what was also interesting is that with the undecided students, 2/3 of them came in undecided, but ultimately picked a major by the time they finished this program. And that's largely attributed to the fact that they were interacting with students, we'll say in BizFit for the business majors. So they thought, well, I have friends who are business majors and I feel like this might be for me, so I think I'll choose business as a major. And whether or not, and this is my personal opinion, whether or not you stick with the major you started with, that's not the big deal. I think it's a good idea to have somewhat of an idea because you can change it. And I do have videos about changing your major and what that can do for you. So you're not necessarily committing for life by picking a major, but it's still a good idea because it is setting a direction once you're beginning college. What they found also is that students who attended were retained at a 5 to 10% higher rate for their second year, which is what a lot of institutions are measured on with first year retention because that is a mark of success. So backing up, what does that mean? Essentially, a student coming in for the fall who then stays until the next fall, which would be the fall of their second year, that is marking that that first year student was retained. And so that is your first year retention rate, and that's what you're measured on if this is something that you're not familiar with. So students who attended NevadaFIT were retained at a 5 to 10% higher rate than students who did not attend. Now in the world of retention and first year retention, a 10% boost is very significant. And I think the national average is in the low to mid 80% for an entire class. And so if you can boost that as much as you can and get into the 90s, then you're talking about having a very successful institution and a very successful culture. And so I'm going to go off on a small tangent here. Why does that matter? Because what we measure ourselves on in institutions is if a student is able to stay until their second year, then they're more likely to stay through graduation. Typically when students will drop out or they will not return for a following year, it usually happens in that first year. And that's why the first year is so critical for students in feeling comfortable, feeling like they can adapt, feeling connected, feeling like they belong, and all of these things that I talk about on this channel. That's why a lot of these resources and this attention is put into that first year. So to have a program on this scale, having these sorts of results is impressive. And I applaud Nevada Reno for having the audacity to grow this to fit 11 colleges or 11 camps and be able to sustain it for as long as they have with continued opportunities for future success. So I think it's awesome as a student, especially if you're undecided, especially when you have 2/3 of students finding their place, because you can kind of get exposed early on to what could be, what could not be for you, and you can start to see yourself maybe in certain majors. So it's a very good head start for students who are undecided. And two, I think for students who do have majors selected, I think it's a good way to confirm that. Because if you are a little uncertain about business, maybe someone is telling you that you should be a business major, and you go to that economics lecture, you may find like, ooh, this is exciting, I love this. Or what if you find like, this is really boring me to tears, music is more my passion? Well, you have that window of opportunity or that window of time to change your mind and think about changing your major before classes actually begin. What I also love is just having that immersive experience in finding your way across campus. What I see in my job interacting with students a lot is there's this anxiety for incoming students with wanting to know where their classes are and wanting to feel comfortable with the campus, like physically, where are my classes located? And so they have a lot of questions about that, and they will often try to find their classes in the few days leading up to the semester starting so they can avoid, which is ultimately the embarrassment of not being able to find your class or walking into class late and looking foolish, especially when you're trying to make a good impression as a student being on campus for the first time. So being able to physically be on campus and start to take advantage of that a week early is awesome. I love it. So were you ever a part of a summer bridge or an early start program? Do you have a child or a relative or a friend who was a part of that? And what was that experience like? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you think that institutions should grow larger or if you think it was not as useful as you had hoped. Either way, I'm curious to know your thoughts, so let me know. And with that, thank you for watching. Make sure you hit like if you liked this video, subscribe if you want to see more. And with that, I will catch you in the next one.